when you hit rock bottom, it's so good when you know the Lord because he's right there with you. And through that time, walking with him step by step through that trial, my husband went to prison for a while, at federal prison. Having to visit him in prison, building a business is hard enough without having to go through a trial. And then having 4 stepkids, and I was actually pregnant at the time it all started. And so that entire time, you know, people from the outside would look in and say, how on earth are you surviving this?
This is CIA, Contagious Influencers of America. I'm David Sams.
And I'm Victoria Robinson.
I know that you know that I need a makeover.
Well, I wasn't going to say it, but since you did, maybe a small one. But you've done great during this pandemic. You're walking 5,000 miles. I mean, you're doing good. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, I'm walking. I'm skating. It's a lot. It's a different world now. But we have somebody today who is an amazing brand image person. As a matter of fact, she has worked with some incredible companies.
I mean, it's a who's who of businesses, David, who she's worked with. There's Dollar General, Nissan, Fifth Third Bank, LBMC, Avenue Bank, and the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah, she's got AT&T here, SunTrust Bank, Kraft CPA. I mean, it's Vanderbilt University of Tennessee. The bottom line is that we could read these names for the next 30 minutes. This woman has worked with so many individuals and companies. She is a brand consultant. The best I could say is that she is a makeover maven.
Yeah, she is. And we're talking about MILA GRIGG. She is the owner and founder of Moda Image. And this woman's story is fascinating. It is encouraging. It's inspirational. You do not want to miss this.
I want to tell you, I was a little bit concerned because she brought her husband along. And
you were concerned because she brought her husband?
You know, normally I wouldn't be concerned, but this guy was in prison. He was in the penitentiary because of some shenanigans that he got himself into.
Well, he didn't kill anybody.
It just
makes you
weird,
uncomfortable.
Yeah. Especially I thought, well, I'm going to interview her, and I have to ask her the tough questions because, you know, he went to prison for you're going to hear why in a minute. Mm-hmm. And I know he's coming along. He's going to sit next to her. And you're just thinking, if I ask her the wrong question,
is he going to kill you?
Is he going to give me the dirty look, right? So I was a little uncomfortable, but I want to tell you something. They came here. They were the most lovely folks. Their story will blow your socks off. You are going to learn a lot about how to get your comeback. Mm-hmm. After the pandemic. We're past the lockdown now. We're all out there. We're having to reinvent ourselves. And that's right. That's the reason I wanted her here.
Yeah.
We can't look at the world the same way we did 6 months ago.
No, we can't. We're a totally different world. So there's no better time than right now than to listen to what MILA GRIGG has to say.
So image and brand consulting. Everybody's concerned about their image these days, at least in social media, I see, right?
That's right, yes. Yeah, they are. I mean, it's one of those things that is more important than ever. If you want to be seen for who you are, those things matter. So we talk about brand in terms of who are you, why do you do what you do, what's your true purpose, which is great for me because I get to go a little deeper than just, you know, the fake on social media.
So when you meet with someone for the first time, mm-hmm. and they're trying to figure out, I guess that's the first problem is that they're trying to figure out who they are. But how do you help define who they are? How do you get to the bottom line?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a process for everybody, and it's not the easiest question to answer in 5 minutes or less. Like, who are you? Why are you here? Why were you created? Really, for Moda and for myself, when I started the company, I had no idea it would go this way. I had no idea. I mean, if you had told me 10 years ago that I would be talking to people about their very God-given purpose and why they were born or created with executives at, you know, high-profile companies, I would have said you're absolutely lying. But I have found that, you know, when you talk about brand and who you are and why are you here, so many people have missed that. So more than just here, let's create an image that you can sell. It's you have a God-given purpose and everybody has value. And so many people, especially in the business world, have missed that. And they're just working to work or working for the money, or they're just a cog on a wheel. So I get to go backwards with brand, with when it comes to the individual, and go, "Man, why are you here? What are you doing this for?" And it allows me, when I can, in a secular world, to share the gospel in a way that I never thought I'd be able to as a business owner. So it's a lot more than just image.
How did you discover who you are and what your brand is?
Yeah, I would say, we're all tested and tried in life. All of our favorite pastors, I'm certain we've heard everybody talk about, you're either in a trial, you're going through one, or you're walking out of one. And I would say that I really found out who I was in a trial that I went through. But I grew up not knowing who the Lord was really and what it meant. I knew that Jesus was who he was, but I didn't know why that mattered. And so in my early 20s, finally found out what that connection was. And in a church right here in Nashville, Tennessee, just realized it was like lightning, the connection. So that in my early 20s started this journey. I had my own business, and I'm working, and I'm trying to figure out who I am. And then, really in 2009, I went through a pretty fiery trial in life, very painful. It lasted a good 6 years. And through that trial, and it had, to do with my husband and what, was going on with him. And then we were in a literal trial. I wasn't, but he was. And so that had affected me. So I'm going through a trial quite literally and figuratively. And through that time and going through that fire, really had to realize very quickly who I was, what I was made of, where my value came from, only the Lord, not from people around me. Found out who my friends were and weren't. And through that trial, had to build a brand for business to survive and to thrive, had to raise a family alone for a little while. And that time, you can, when you hit rock bottom, it's so good when you know the Lord because he's right there with you. And through that time, walking with him step by step through that trial, ended up, my husband went to prison for a while, at federal prison. And so having to visit him in prison, building a business is hard enough without having to go through a trial. And then having 4 stepkids, and I was actually pregnant at the time it all started. And so that entire time, people from the outside would look in and say, how on earth are you surviving this? And by all, means, you shouldn't be married still. You shouldn't be joyful. You should be, your business should be in shambles, and nobody should be around you, right? So through that, really had to realize who I was, because you take hits fast and furiously, and was in the Word as much as a human could possibly be, was on my knees praying constantly, just found out that I was made of more than what I thought I was. And that was the connection for me between who I was and what I was telling people and preaching to people about brand. I knew that every day I got up, I knew I had to know who I was, because it was so hard. It's excruciating. So every day I said, look, my faith is my foundation. My other brand word, right, is excellence. My next brand word is integrity, because if you have a lapse in it, then everything falls apart. So I'm preaching to companies and individuals, like, you need to have these values that lift you up on your worst day, kind of an idea. And that storm, that trial, all that we went through was the moment that I found out what I was made of, and was able to connect it to what I did, and only God can do that. And it's been a journey ever since.
What was your husband in jail for, and why did you stick around? Because you said everybody tried to talk you out of being married, right? Yeah,
I think a lot of people, when they take their vows, when I took my vow, I think getting to know Christ later in life for me was a good thing, right? Because I grew up so long knowing what it was like to live without him leading and guiding. And so when I found him, I was like Paul, I'm yelling it to everybody, like, do you know who Jesus is? This is amazing, kind of an idea. And so when I got married, I wasn't that far out from just having met him, right? Several years, not that, just a few years. So for me, when I took my vows that day, that was just the covenant that I knew that I wouldn't break. That was it. Like I said, I do. And it was for, sickness and in health. And for better, for worse. And, I told the Lord, like, I'm going to do this regardless of what happens. And that was it. Like, how do you break that promise to God? But Gordon, my husband, we're still married by the grace of God, still go through fires, but nothing like that one. But, I think for me, it was just a covenant with the Lord. And there were days I think our marriage survived because I promised God more than I hate to cry on the radio, but here I am, more than I promised Gordon at times, right? It was my connection to the Lord. And I knew that the Lord had Gordon in the palm of his hand, and I could see that shift and that change, and I could watch Gordon's journey, and I could watch his heart change, and I could watch, a man who had been at the pinnacle of success and then hit rock bottom. And I couldn't be with him in that time because you're obviously separated by a prison. And so I could really watch Gordon's heart being molded. And the words in the Bible, they almost leapt off the page at that time. It just made it so real to watch God working on someone, and then separately to have God working on me. So we're both growing, but because we're growing to the Lord, we're growing back together again. So for me, it was a promise. I'm very loyal. I'm a big fan of accountability and consequence. And I knew that it was his consequence for his actions, but it was certainly a trial for me. But I knew that if God had him and if he was following his word, and I was too, that in that obedience, there's no other way than to end well when you're following the Lord. And I could see that change. So it wasn't an easy decision, but it was the only decision for me. I never really questioned it. And thank God I didn't.
But what was the crime?
Well, that's more his story, but the crime was what you would imagine a Ponzi scheme to be. And there's so much more behind it. So I guess if I had to put a title on it, that's what the title would be.
And that got resolved?
Didn't get resolved. No. I mean, well, it did now, but in 2009, everything kind of started to come to the surface. Long story short, in 2009, he was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. And when he left in September of 2009, I was 6 months pregnant. So he gets sentenced by a federal judge in Nashville to 10 years. And we then mounted, not because he was innocent, but because there were so many details that were left out of the first trial that the judge just didn't know. It wasn't what he did was wrong, but there was so much more to it. So through that time, mounted an appeal, and the same judge vacated her sentence about 4 years later, and essentially sentenced him to time served, and he's been paying restitution and working his way back ever since. I'm really proud of that. So
you stuck in there.
Yeah.
Right? You stuck in there the entire time.
Yeah.
Look, we see these TV movies all the time. So, take me into the real world here.
Yeah.
What was it like going into prison and sitting down with him? What was it doing to you? How were you getting through that time? Okay. How was your faith helping you through that? What were you being told?
Yeah. Well, I think through that time, it's hard because at that point, I have stepchildren who I'm very much a part of their lives, right? And then I have my own, infant that just starts out. It's as excruciating as you would imagine it to be, right? Like you never wake up and think, well, gosh, this is, how I imagined my life was going to turn out, but by any stretch of the imagination. But it was a time where my faith isn't just like, oh, God exists and he's real. Like my faith became so real. I would follow every day. It was pastors like Dr. Evans and James McDonald and Ravi Zacharias, John MacArthur, and watching them and listening to them, reading their books, hearing their words. And then that wonderful pastor in Memphis, who's passed and whose name I can't remember, but was a big part of my life. Like being in the Word, so many people say, hey, I'm going through something bad and I have faith. And I always want to jump in and go, but what does that actually mean? Are you in the Word? Are you reading the Bible? Do you have a relationship? Are you walking with Him? Because I'm telling you, when the fire comes and you get whacked and you're on the ground and there's nothing else that you can do, like if you don't know God's Word in His Word, if you can't pull on Scripture, if you don't know what God's voice sounds like, you're sunk. Right? Like I have a little bit of faith and I just, but then some people are like, well, I believe in, the tree and I believe in the universe and I'm like, but that's not enough. Like the Lord is here. So when I went through that time, I developed a relationship with Christ unlike any that I had ever imagined that I would. But without those, those pastors and those men speaking in my ear and mentoring me without even knowing me through the radio and through books, reading His Word, it would have been a disaster, an absolute disaster. In business, I was hit with, is that your husband? At home, I was hit with, wow, how is that working out for you? And then it's, going to federal prison and visiting him and then fortifying him and he's on his own path. And it's excruciating, but that's not the worst trial you can go through in life. There are people who are dying of cancer and I can't imagine that's worse, right? Like yes, it's hard, but we're not in World War II and we're not fighting the Nazis. It's a good thing to have perspective
through moments like that. That's powerful. When did you start your business?
Early 2000s. And then he left in 2009. But
okay.
It was, yeah.
So you were going through this. And you're the branding expert, right?
Yeah. Changing. Yes. Yeah.
But let's face it, a lot of companies deal with things that unexpectedly come up.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of executives deal with things that they weren't expecting to deal with the day before, right? And they have to protect that brand. So I guess this was good training for you. It's a good hands-on experience, right?
Couldn't have worked out better, honestly. This is truly a moment where I can say the Lord made lemonade out of lemons, right? That experience. So people will say, like, how do you know about brand and how can you build a company and how do you know about integrity and how do you know how to build a brand in a hard time? And, I've done it. I've done it. It's an incredible process to have gone through that. And then to be able to, in this lifetime, look back and go, the reward of that horrible trial and the obedience to the Lord is that I get to share that experience with these executives who at times don't even know the Lord or have hope. So I get to go into these secular businesses where God isn't even on the table, but then they go, well, how do you know? And I get to share that story and I get to open that dialogue. And at the end of the day, being able to share the gospel in Fortune 500 companies who on any other day would fire you because you're talking about Christ, but I get to do it because I get to share my own story through the coaching or training. It's the most incredible gift that you can really be given.
So a lot of folks right now, they are in a situation where they have been surprised. They woke up and all of a sudden they didn't have that gig. They didn't have that job. They were filing for unemployment, and they feel like they lost their sense of who they were, their identity, forget about their brand. They feel like they're now one of millions without anything to look forward to, right? And, you've been through the fire and back. What would you tell them? How would you encourage them that there's another side to their story?
I had a really good friend who, in the time of the fire, and it was brings tears to my eyes. She said to me, it was one of the worst days you can imagine. It was one of those where I get a call from the prison and you get this news and you're like, this is just not a good day. And then I'm going to go see, she happened to be a client, but now is a dear friend. And she said to me, this may look dark. This may feel so heavy. This may look like there's just no hope going forward, but one day you're going to get through to the other side and you'll miss how close you felt to the Lord. Like you will feel nostalgic about the time that you were in the trial, because the feeling that you have when you're like in the midst of the fire, but you can feel the Holy Spirit sustaining you, like there's no better feeling. So yes, the fire is hot. Yes, it seems like there's no hope, but if you draw near to the Lord, I can promise you that that feeling you have, you'll miss it. You'll miss it one day. And then I looked at her and said, you're absolutely crazy. Like if you really knew what was really going on, you would never say this to me. I kind of want to punch you in the face because that's insane. I'm not going to miss this terrible time. But the truth is there are days that I not veered from, but wasn't as obedient to God. And I wasn't in the Word as much. And I've been nostalgic about the trial because through trials, you're tested and then you get to see Christ act on your behalf. And there's nothing like it. And then you can look back when you're giving advice like right now and you can say, I've been there. Trust me and trust the Lord and draw near to him. And if you do nothing else today, but open the Word and say, God, where are you? Like, it's incredible. It's incredible. The only advice that I can give is draw near. He allows this to happen in your life so that you can draw near. And, I heard Dr. Tony Evans today did a sermon and he said, he allows this time, he allows this moment of anxiety and worry so that you can jump onto his lap. That was his sermon this morning. And it was so real because in 2009, 10, 11, all the way through 15, when Gordon finally came home, I was constantly walking with him. And then he came back and you miss it because you're not in the Word every day. Like the trials are the best moments with God. They're unbeatable. So the advice I can give is hold on. My grandfather, so secular wisdom would say, my heritage is Serbian. And so we've always been at war one way or another. And my grandfather would say, it's not a bad day, like in his big Serbian kind of Greek accent, unless you're getting chased uphill, Nazis shooting at you in the snow. And I would always remember that. And I always thank the Lord to be born into a Serbian family because it gave me such incredible grit. And then to know the Lord on top of it was just incredible. So even on the worst day, I would say, look, the Nazis are not shooting at me in the snow, and I'm not running without my shoes on in the snow. And he would add just for dramatic flair, and I got shot in leg. I still run 6 miles in snow, So on my worst day, like I wasn't shot in the leg and I didn't see any Nazis. And so, keeping perspective in a trial and knowing that it will end is the best thing in the world. I had a nurse. When I had Sophia, my mom was the only one there. Gordon was in prison, and here I am having my first child, and my husband's in a federal prison. And I was in the hospital, and a nurse came in who I have never seen prior, and I didn't see her again. And I must have had a look on my face, but she walked in, and the first thing she said to me was, honey, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And I thought, you must have the wrong room. But her message to me was, I want you to remember the word through. Yea, though I walk through, she said, Christ doesn't have you sitting in it, dwelling in it, stuck in it. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And those are the most amazing moments because Christ puts people in your path so that you are strengthened by that. And those are the moments that you miss in the trial. So keep your head up. If you're walking keep your head up, ask the Lord to give you those moments. And those are the most beautiful ones that you'll remember for the rest of your life. And then like me, you'll spew on and on one day giving advice about trials and hard times. Hopefully that was
that's good. I have to ask you, here we are coming out of one fire and going into another fire. It seems like the fires just keep coming. It's something every day, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we all thought we were going to go into 2020 and have this wonderful visionary year, right? Mm-hmm. And it turned out to be the year that everybody wants to forget, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Looking at your own life on those years that you just want to forget, right? What are the things after the fact that you look back on the year or years that you wanted to forget? Mm-hmm. And you go, those were the most valuable years where I really was gifted with something mm-hmm. that I otherwise would not have gone through.
Yeah.
So how do you look at a year that we're all going through right now and go, oh my gosh, I mean, you look on social media, everybody wants to get rid of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Can we just skip ahead? You know, that's kind of the way people talk, right?
Yeah.
But let's skip ahead a little bit. And I want you to tell me, as we look back on 2020, what are the valuable lessons that we're going to learn? What are the valuable lessons that you're going to learn? And how can we help utilize those lessons to build our own brands?
Wow. I would say this: if you're never tested, you never find your purpose. If you're never tested and life is easy, you never really understand who you are and why you are, but you also never discover what you're made of, right? If life is easy and you just kind of go through it, you never really have to do much else than just live and survive. That's not the life that the Lord promises us. So looking back, if I hadn't have gone through what I went through, and then subsequent trials, like life doesn't just all of a sudden get easy after one. And I think that's something that is important to remember. Like, this is a hard moment, but there are going to be 1,000 more hard moments in your life. And some that are most likely going to be 1,000 times harder than the one you're walking through right now. So as you build your brand, understand that those moments of testing and those moments, and if those moments are the ones that sustain you in the future, those are the ones that allow me to sit here with you and to hopefully give a piece of advice that's valuable to somebody because I have experience in it. A lot of people nowadays in social media have brands that are built on opinions that don't come from any experience at all. If while you're walking through this, understand that you're building the experience to be able to have the integrity of the experience to actually give somebody advice that matters. I'm not sure if I'm tiptoeing around it or answering the question, but I wouldn't give up one bit of pain of that trial, or one day. I wouldn't give one day back, because what I learned and what I was able to see and garner, and again, the relationship that I was able to form with Christ that I would not have had today. And now I'm able to help people walk through really tough times because I've walked through tough times. We're what we walk through is how the experiences that we have now we're supposed to share so that others can learn. In 2020, 2021 might be your worst year yet. 2025 might be the year that the world implodes. It just is what it is. Trials are going to come. Keep perspective. I look back and I'm like, that was tough. But, again, if one of my kids were sick, I'd send my husband back to prison in a heartbeat if that was the choice. Like, there are worse things that can happen. You have to keep perspective. So as I look back, the experience that you're gaining is invaluable. It's priceless. Take every minute. But for those of us who know the Lord, it's more important for us now than it has ever been to be in his word and walk with him, and not just say that you know him, but to really know him. And to be able to share from a place of truth, which is scripture, versus a place of opinion, which doesn't matter. So when all of this stuff in 2020 is going on, whether it's, the economy tanking and the pandemic coming and, the Lord is still on the throne, he's not surprised. When I look for experienced people to turn to, I turn to people like Dr. Tony Evans, because I know that he's walked through it and I know he has a perspective I can lean on because I know he's in the word, right? So don't just get out there on social and pop off and have a brand that is an opinion-based brand. Have experience. And this could be your first trial. This could be your first test. Soak it in. Soak it in and get in God's word. It's the only thing it's the best advice that I could possibly give. Don't just be an opinion-based social media spewer, right? If you're going to get on social media and build a brand, if you're going to give other people advice, if you're going to build a business, you need to have experience, or else zip it, go learn, and then start talking in 10 years once you've learned.
Do you like working with personalities or companies?
Both. Individuals and companies, both.
Individuals and companies.
Mm-hmm. Mostly executives of some kind, and then corporations of any size. Mm-hmm. Yeah, schools, companies, firms, all of the above.
What has been the most challenging success story that you've had as far as building a brand or dealing with somebody? I guess what I'm asking is, somebody walks in your office and you go, man, this is a tough one. And you had a big turnaround.
Okay, so I would say for me, I was fired from a Fortune 500 company because I was somebody asked me my personal story, and I actually mentioned the Lord, and I was fired, leading me to realize that most companies actually don't have a foundation. They don't have brand values that people follow. Culture is a mess, and they don't actually have this foundation that all the employees buy into. On a personal note, I would say one of the most challenging, heart-wrenching stories are when people deserve more in their life, but they're not getting it because what they portray isn't who they are. They're not natural-born storytellers. They don't know how to share their value. So if we have clients that come to us and say, I'm up for a position, but then the board is telling me I'll most likely never get it because of these things that they could change, like brand changes. So I had a man who was up for a C-suite position at a Fortune 500 company. He was experienced. Gosh, he deserved it. He was a hard worker. Integrity, which is very hard to find. Most people say they have integrity, and frankly, they just don't. He was black and white, transparent, a good leader. People loved him, but his brand image, his visual image, the way he spoke, how he communicated in terms of he wasn't able to get a message across to a room. He didn't know how to sit. He didn't know how to command a presence. He didn't share his story in a way that people knew who he was and all that he had to offer. So he most likely wasn't going to get the position. And so I came along, was so blessed to work and humbled really to work with someone who I have such a level of respect for. And he went from there's no way he's going to get that position to less than 13 weeks later being named to the C-suite at this Fortune 500 company. And that for me is the day, when somebody like that gets promoted because we've given them the ability to share their story, share who they are, share their purpose, share their why. Why are you even here? Why are you created? And then to be able to walk into a room and teach them those things that they just don't naturally have. And then to actually end up where they deserve to be versus being missed their whole lives. That's the day I can die. I mean, I'm helping people. I often say I help people to be the best that God created them to be. And a lot of people will go, that's very cheesy. But that's exactly what I do when it comes to the individual. So that was a tough one for me. In terms of if I didn't help him succeed, I would have hated it, right? But those are the individual stories that I absolutely love. I love when I help companies to be better at their core. A lot of people talk about leadership. Most people don't know it. Most people don't even know who John Maxwell is, but they consider themselves the leader's leader. So when I go to a company and I realize that they're letting the gossipers run the company culture, or they're letting people get away with crazy things, or they're not promoting people that they should, or they say that they're a leader, but they've literally never even read a leadership book. I just walk in and I go, wow, this is where I thrive, because I can organize, I can see who should be moved up, I can see where the company should be going, and I can help their leaders to be the best they were created to be, and to get rid of those that don't and should not be a part of the culture. So that, I would say, those are the two wheelhouses that I live in. And it's easy for me to be direct because I've lived the trial I've lived through. So it's easy for me to have truth and grace at the same time.
How did you get the thing that you got? I mean, you don't go to school for this, right?
No.
So how'd you get the thing that you got? How did you stumble onto it?
Yeah.
How was it revealed to you? And I ask you this because, first of all, oh my gosh, everybody's a personal coach now, or what do you call it? I guess
life
coach, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's a life coach. Oh my gosh. I know people that their lives are a wreck, but they make their livelihood by being a life coach.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So how do you become the brand guru, right? It's not like you went to, forget Harvard. I wouldn't go there anyway, but hey, I could call it the way it is. How did you get to where you are?
Yeah.
A lightning bolt hit you? I mean, what happened?
Yeah, pretty much. I started out my career early on in NASCAR. And I knew nothing about it. And frankly, I was thrown into the fire in NASCAR over 20 years ago. And NASCAR was talking about brand before really almost anyone else was talking about brand. They understood brand to such a degree that that's how they make their money. So I learned about brand there. I was a fly on the wall in rooms that I probably shouldn't have been in, but blessed to. So really started to understand the concept of branding, frankly. And then started the company. And I actually worked with individuals on their visual image and brand not stars, not country music artists, but actual executives on their brand and how they're seen, and have been in truly thousands of closets and started to hear their stories. I believe everybody has a gifting and something that they're good at. And I just at some point realized that I had a natural gifting for being able to see why somebody wasn't where they should be or wanted to be. And the little things, whether it was communication, a low level of emotional intelligence, not being able to read a room, no social awareness, horrible body language. So I would watch people walk and talk and lead meetings and go, oh, that's why you got fired. Or, ooh, that's why that meeting didn't go well. Or that's why everybody underneath you isn't listening. You think you're a leader, but nobody's following you. So that gifting or that natural bent or ability, I feel like, is just a gift that I've got over the years, was developed. And hearing those stories from the closet and then going through that trial and understanding even more about how important all of those pieces were, just built it. And I have read hundreds of books and listened to everything I could possibly do. And I think the experience that I have, having gone through what I went through with all of those clients, and then what I walked through in that trial with my husband, and then being able to work with corporations and start small and now go big, was what led me here. I follow a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk, and my disclaimer is he does use curse words, but he very much understands brand and social media. And he often says, look, I was quiet for 13 years. I didn't say a word on social. I learned. And then when I was ready to give my thoughts based upon experience, not opinion, then I started to go out and do it. And I feel like I took the same path. A lot of people will even ask, like, why didn't you start on Instagram earlier? Still learning, ensuring that I knew, knowing that I was the expert, making sure that when I offered a piece of advice, it was valuable and it made a shift in either a company or an individual's life. So just over 20 years, just the experience, it's hard to beat experience.
Well, but if you're somebody like me who goes out and says crazy things all the time on social media, how do you reinvent yourself?
How do you reinvent?
Do you just close down your account and start over again? Because I'm sure this comes up all the time with people that you work with.
I mean, I would ask them, like, what is your purpose? Why would you want to reinvent? What have you done that goes out of, what are your goals? What is your purpose? What did God put you here to do? And are you reaching that? Or have you been distracted? And are you throwing out things that are you or aren't you? You can say crazy things, but that could be who you are. I mean, that could be changing lives. There could be a purpose in that. But a lot of people get on there, a lot of companies get on there, individuals get on there, and they just start talking about things that absolutely, there's no end to it. There's no end game. You just are spewing versus delivering value, selling versus delivering value. So if somebody wants to reinvent, I would say before you even think about reinventing out here, you need to start in the heart and see where you're going and what the Lord intended for your life and what that means for you. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot more than just reinventing in marketing. And marketing has a lot to do with it, and that's what I went to school for, and that's really helpful. But at the end of the day, people market before they know their purpose and their why. And if you don't know those two things as a human or a company, failure is inevitable. Like, you will fail. You have to know your purpose. You have to know your why. You have to have your brand core values right in front of you. There are days that I meet someone that I don't really like. There are days that I meet people that I want to deliver a lot more truth and a lot less grace to. But I remember that who I am on my best day is truth and grace. I remember who I am on my best day is integrity. I remember who I am on my best day is excellence. And every single client deserves that. So you have to have that filter. You can't just spew everything that you do on the internet or whenever you're trying to market your company or yourself. You have to have those core value attributes, and they have to mean something to you. And for companies, your employees have to know what those are. They have to mean something to the employee. Chick-fil-A does a perfect job of doing this. I mean, Chick-fil-A is the company that says, we're honored to serve you and we're blessed to be here. I mean, all of those words are ingrained in them. They believe it. Most companies don't have that, and that's why they fail. You have to have brand. Without brand, you have nothing. Brand drives everything. But beautifully enough, that connection to purpose and why, and then foundationally Christ, I mean, that's how brand and who you are on purpose connect in my sphere for me. So that's been that's been one of the greatest gifts in my life, being able to wed the two together.
I have an assignment for you here, an instant assignment, okay?
Here we go.
We have an election coming up.
Yeah.
Let's put politics aside, okay? Let's not talk politics. Let's just talk practicality. Let's talk branding here.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you both candidates. Give Donald Trump some advice. Go. From a branding standpoint, politics aside.
I would give any candidate the
No.
advice.
Donald Trump first. And then we'll do Joe Biden, okay?
Yeah. Ooh. I would say with Donald Trump, I would tell him, I think you're empathetic, show it. Right? Empathy and kindness are underrated brand values, and they can, if you can show that side of you, because I feel like as if he does have empathy, but he doesn't show it. And just a little bit more of, I love the transparency. I love the authenticity. I think everybody should be transparent and authentic. And I think that's what he is, whether you like him or not. He's as transparent as it gets. I would say empathy goes a long way. And I don't think that's something that he misses. I think it's something that he fails to share.
Joe Biden.
Pick a lane. I would tell him to pick a lane. Like, you can't say things like, I don't agree. Like he says, I don't believe, and here I'm going deep fast. So here it is. Here we go. You know, he says, I don't personally believe in abortion, but I believe that you should have pro-choice. Pick a lane. It's one or the other.
Pick a lane.
Pick a lane. Yeah.
And you find that a lot with folks that you work with, is that they just haven't defined their lane. They don't know what lane they're in.
Yeah, I think with a lot of people that I work with, not everyone's going to like you. Like, not everyone's going to like what I just said. And I empathize with that. I care. I mean, at my core, I want you to like me, obviously. You know, I'm a human being, but I know who I am. And I know my purpose, and I know what's truth and I know what isn't truth, because I go by God's word, not by my own opinion or anyone else's for that matter. So when it comes to executives or political candidates, it's not a hard line to walk. Like, truth is truth. It's very simple. It's in God's word, and there isn't any, you don't have to question it. So with someone like Joe Biden, it's pick a lane. Right? More transparency. Talk about the things that you've done wrong. You've been around for decades. And now you're running for president, and you think that's going to change. And if you do, so if I'm your brand guru, I would say you've been here, 30, 40 years? What is going to be different now? Be authentic and transparent about the things you haven't done. And let's talk about the things you're going to do and how, but transparency and authenticity. And I would say for Joe Biden, hold yourself a little bit more accountable to those things. That would be transparency for me.
We hear that authenticity word all the time.
Right.
I mean, frankly, I was using it 35, 36 years ago because I was in the television business and launched some pretty authentic people. The long and the short of it is that we really believed in that word. I mean, it really stood for something. And back in those days, for example, morning shows, they were all about putting Ken and Barbie on the air. You know, the guy with the chiseled face and with the gorgeous blonde girl, and they were just like Barbie and Ken. You know, I mean, and then all of a sudden we brought Oprah out. Right. And she went against the grain. She ran around the studio without her shoes on. Right. And people just didn't do that back then. I mean, the competition was Phil Donahue. You know, it was Mr. You know, or you were the guy with the gray hair. You were Ken and Barbie, or the guy with the gray hair, and that's what made you authentic, right? But then we broke that mold, and now I hear that word authentic, and I'm just thinking, man, we've turned that word into it's cheap now. It's used in such a cheap way, right? I mean, people think that because now everybody's using Zoom, and you don't have to use lights, and the audio sounds bad, that's authentic. And it's like, it's ridiculous. It's not authenticity, okay? It might be raw. I mean, but there's a big difference to me in the authenticity of today and the authenticity of 30 or 40 years ago, all right? And the reason I bring that up is because I want you to talk about that a minute, about the importance of just really, truly letting your hair down and being who you are. And not being afraid, realizing that you're not going to be loved by everyone. You're going to turn some people off. But, I mean, at the end of the day, God really did make us as unique individuals, right? And that's really where our authenticity, I can't say it, that's where it really resides if we want to allow God to do his thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it goes back to what you said a few sentences back. I tell clients this all the time. Authenticity comes from the idea, the knowing that not everyone's going to like your story. And who cares, right? The Lord made you a certain way, and you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you have your own story to share. Not everyone's going to like my story. And I think that I was able to get over that fairly quickly because I went through a fire where people were judging, wondering who I was, asking if I had integrity, and really putting me through the ringer. And I realized at that time I can either pander to what they thought I was, right? Just this nice, I'll do anything and I'm here to get everybody's approval and I just want more clients. Or I could be the real me, which is truth and grace, which is God's word, which is strength, which is being able to see right and wrong and go, that's wrong and that's right. A high level of integrity. And I know that not everybody likes me, and I'm really okay with that. Unless I've hurt someone and then I want the opportunity to apologize. But if you don't like my story, I just don't care, because I know I have a purpose and I know I have value. And I know that most of the time I'm obedient to the Lord and to his word. And if you don't like me when I know that what I'm doing is authentic to me, it just is what it is. So authenticity for clients, as we work on their brands, a lot of them want to sell something that they're not, or that they think other people should. They sell what they think other people want. I'm always going, let's dig back a little bit. You have a story that nobody else has, and the Lord has allowed you to live through trials and experiences in life that no one else has. And those are the stories that we want to share. Those are the stories that God allowed you to go through so you could be who you are today. So those authentic stories that companies share always win. The authentic stories that individuals share always win. But in order to be authentic, it's so easy to have your voice drown out in a crowd nowadays, especially on social media. And there are a lot of very loud people out there who are very quick to say, I don't like your truth. And that's okay. But you really have to know who you are so you don't recoil on that, right? You cannot be fearful of people not liking who you are. If that's authentic to who you are, then it is what it is. But I would also challenge that with, where do you base your experience? Where do you base your opinion on? If it's not based on experience and based on on an opinion, then I really have no use for that. Right? You have to give me thoughts and ideas based upon experience. And so on social, to be authentic, you have to share that story so people know that why they should be listening to you. Why do you have value? Are you worth listening to on this topic? So, and then getting really okay. And I did very quickly. It was hard at first, not knowing that people would second guess me, going through that trial and having been through that tough time. But I just, at the end of the day, if I'm doing what I know is right and I'm being obedient to the only one that really matters, I just don't care what you think.
What is the biggest challenge that you're faced with right now that you weren't challenged with 3-4 months ago in dealing with clients coming out of this?
People weren't ready. So my challenge is...
Wait.
Yeah.
People weren't ready for a pandemic and rioting?
Yeah.
At the same time?
They were not. They weren't ready. Our clients, people are calling us now saying, what do we do? We can't build business. We're having a hard time with business development. Clients or people who are now clients are saying, we have had the hardest time. I was fired. I have no network. I have no social media presence. I have no storytelling. I have no value build in the community. And I am now stuck because I've either been furloughed or fired. And then we have people who have called who have said, we literally cannot build business because we failed to prepare for the crisis. And so, someone on social media just yesterday on LinkedIn said, you should be very careful about how you say that because of course we weren't prepared for a pandemic. And my answer is, well, of course you weren't prepared for a pandemic, but crises always come. That is the certainty in life. A crisis will always come. We don't know how large or small. So in order for you to succeed in that, whether you're a company or an individual, you have to share your story. You have to build your brand. You have to tell people why you have a value and why they should find you in moments like that. And people just were not prepared for that. So some have been fired just because of financial cuts, not because they weren't worthy of the position. And frankly, they just weren't prepared. And so now they're stuck building a brand through a crisis. You have to build brand because you only fall in life as far as your brand allows you to fall. Right? So if you get fired, but you have amazing brand ambassadors out there and people that know your worth and your value, it's so much easier to go to the next position, to the next phase in life. But if you're incredibly talented and you just work and you don't share your story and you don't know how to do that and you don't have a brand that other people know and can share for you, failure is around the bend. So that has been the toughest thing to hear, but a joy for us to be able to help those that come our way.
So for someone who's out there right now who has lost their job, they are amongst the unemployed, they are thinking that they now have to reinvent themselves, start over again. Give me 3 steps. Where do they start? What's the most important thing to get their name out there and to get their foot in the door?
Yeah. So for someone in business, I would say the biggest thing that you can do, you have to punt before you can really kind of move forward. So the first thing that I would do is establish your core values. Like, who are you? What are 3 to 5 words that you want people to associate with you, whether they see you, visually hear you, see you on LinkedIn, see you on the internet, or see you walking down the street? What are the 3 to 5 keywords you want people to use to describe you in all situations? Those are your brand values. That's your filter for every decision, every word, and every social media post that you do. You want someone to use the word excellence when they think about you or describe you, well, then everything that goes through your mouth or onto a social media channel needs to be done with excellence or integrity or empathy, whatever your words are. It's like a great corporation has values, you need yours as well. Then you can start building your own personal marketing plan, because if you just go out there and start throwing things to the wind, nothing will really stick. It has to go through the filter of brand. Who are you, right? So then the second part of that is, if you're not on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn as fast as you can. Get a great picture, have it professionally done. Don't do it outside or with an animal next to you unless you're a veterinarian, right? Look professional, and then start posting and building your brand. So I would say, look, if you're an engineer, but you're also a thought leader on leadership, right? Then I'm going to tell you as a client, go start posting John Maxwell's post. Build your brand by co-branding with other experts in the field. Post at least 1 to 3 times a day. That can be a quote from somebody else. That can be original content from you, which could be a blog on something that matters to you that you're very good at, and then start posting 1 to 3 times a day. And then the third part of that is to get your network out there. Obviously, we're networking more online now than in person. So for networking, that would be engagement. Most people on social media are narcissistic posters. So they post and they think that people should just find them. Not the case at all. So who are you going after? Who are the companies that you want to work for? Who are the clients that you want? Go research what they're doing, engage with them, comment, post, share their posts, share value. Don't just go out there and sell. So most of branding is knowing why you're valuable, what you have to share, what that gift is that nobody else has, and then using storytelling, authentic stories about your life that you've lived through, so people know that you have a base of experience, and start to share your value through those stories. Engage with the people that you want to know. Do the research. Don't be a narcissistic social media poster and just post things because, you think you're so important or you don't know how, right? It's one or the other. But engage. And then people will start to see your brand. They'll pick up on it. They'll go, you like that Forbes article? So did I. And then you write an article about the Forbes article that you like, right? Like co-brand with brands that are bigger than yours. And then people will start to come to you. So those are the 3 tips that I would give immediately to anyone looking to network who's been furloughed or lost a job.
Now, do you work with people, obviously in Tennessee, in Middle Tennessee, but do you work with people all over
the U.S.?
All over the U.S.?
Yes, yeah.
And how do you do that now? Do you primarily do that via Skype? Do you get on airplanes? What do you do for the most part?
Yeah, before this hit, of course, airplanes, but a lot of it was Zoom even prior to that. So that wasn't a big pivot for us, because yes, you can coach anybody anywhere in the world and be on Zoom and you're right there. But for companies, it's a little bit different because we're more of the firm. I like to be in the trenches with people versus consulting, and I'm right there with them, showing them how and teaching them in real time. So that's been different, but Zoom is incredible. Yeah.
And how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can go to the website, just MODA, M-O-D-A, imageconsulting.com, and all the information is there. And then around Christmas time, we'll have a book out called Forged by Fire.
Oh, really? What's in that?
So it'll be really the personal story mixed into how can any individual build a personal brand and to be seen for their worth and their value.
And that'll be out around Christmas time.
Around Christmas time.
I used to say wherever you buy your books, but now it's all Amazon.com.
That's exactly right. Amazon.com. Easy enough.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, Victoria, what did you learn?
I learned that with perseverance and with God, all things are possible. I learned that nobody should have an excuse. This woman has been through so much and she's come out on top with God's help. Her marriage is stronger and it stayed together. It survived. I mean, come on, people. What is your excuse?
There is no reason why you can't come out of this pandemic 10 times better than you were before. And I'm not talking necessarily more money in the bank. A lot of us have different gigs.
Right. But look what you've done. I mean, what you're walking now. What have you walked? 500 miles since the pandemic started?
No, I'm up to about 400 miles, but I'm back on skates.
Right.
On skates.
Literally.
Literally. Are you enjoying that, by the way?
I do love roller skates. I love to take the grandkids and go, around the ring. I used to go every Friday night. But I got to tell you, David, a lot of people have gained weight during this pandemic. They've went into depression during this pandemic. They feel like I'm misplaced now. Maybe some have lost their jobs. So that's what I love about this podcast. It gives everybody hope and encouragement that you can get back off your couch and reinvent yourself and do even more than what you did 6 months ago.
And we're here to give you tools and to fill that toolbox back up again. We really appreciate the fact that you spend time with us. There's a million podcasts out there, and the fact that you choose us means an awful lot. Please do go rate and review us. I cannot emphasize that enough. That's the only way that people are going to find out about CIA, Contagious Influencers of America.
That's right. So thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.
And remember to go out there and live that life in living color, because it sure is a heck of a lot more interesting than living it in black and white. See you next time.